The day after actor Eric Dane died, Netflix released the second episode of its interview series, Famous Last Words. The actor had been suffering from the disease ALS. Now, this show gives people a chance to go on the record for the very last time and lets us think about the power of last words.
The past contains regrets. The future remains unknown. So you have to live now. The present is all you have. Treasure it. Cherish every moment.
Sandra Marche is a palliative care nurse, and Dr. James Maskalyk is an emergency physician and author. Welcome to Commotion.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Hi there.
So, Sandra, this is a show actually based on a Danish series called The Last Word. And this concept is so extraordinary. You know, people sitting down with just the interviewer on set and talking about life and death and knowing that this episode will only come out after they die. What do you think makes this show so impactful?
I think that it just really is so striking because they are just, sitting in a room, human to human, with no audience, with no pressure to perform, and to really face the fact that humans are mortal and that we all have a gift to leave to those who are there after we go.
That's so beautiful. James, I'm curious, what's the power in knowing that whatever you say won't come out until after you die?
I think it really engenders, authenticity and probably vulnerability because you have the stakes. You're already facing the highest possible stakes in a certain way. So you really get this gift of, being your true self. I suppose maybe not everyone, perhaps someone's going to try to correct the record or something like that. But I think for a lot of people, you've done a lot of stock taking of your life and looking back on it. And what sticks out is what you're going to pass along.
I love that. Well, let's get into this most recent episode and hear one of the very last things that actor Eric Dane said. Brad Falchuk, the interviewer, gets up and leaves the room, and Eric speaks directly to the camera, and he's talking to his daughters, Billy and Georgia.
Finally, fight with every ounce of your being and with dignity. When you face challenges, health or otherwise, fight. Never give up. Fight until your last breath. This disease is slowly taking my body, but it will never take my spirit. I hope I've demonstrated that you can face anything. You can face the end of your days. You can face hell with dignity. Fight, girls, and hold your heads high.
I mean, as a parent, it's hard not to get very emotional watching that clip. Sandra, you spend a lot of time with dying patients in your job as a palliative care nurse. What was your experience like watching this?
Well, similarly, as a parent, I thought of my own children. And then I also think of the families that I work with, right? And there are times where there's a fear to face what's coming next. And so people might lose that opportunity to share those words with their loved ones. And everyone's kind of suffering in their own corner. And what we try to do is really to maybe open up the conversation. So something like this, scary to face, but maybe some good can come from this taking stock and this thinking about what are the things that mattered in my life.
It must be so incredible, too, to know that your children have something of you and from you that they can revisit over and over again. Because I can imagine that when you lose someone like that, what you want is just to hear them again and see them again. And it's so nice to leave a record like that. James, you're also encountering this as someone who has witnessed many people die in the emergency room, but you're also living with stage 4 cancer. How does something like this land for you?
Yeah, I was quite moved as well. I feel on the receiving side, I get denied these last words because people experience calamity or, have already said their last words before they're transferred to the hospital from their home or whatever state they're in. And I get kind of a list of 3 things. Let's do everything. don't do anything invasive, or 3, let's do nothing. And I always want to know why. I'd love the advanced directives to include why. Let's do everything because I love my daughters, or I
Yeah.
love gardening, or I want to see more of this world, or I want nothing done because I've said everything I need to say and it's my time to go. So it just feels like a gift for someone like me who sees people at the end. We try to dignify whatever those wishes are. That's our honor and the point of their arrival to the ER. So yeah, I hope for more of this. I hope for a mature and honest and loving discussion about what matters most in life. And sometimes that really only happens when you're looking at it from that perspective at the end.
Does it make you think about what you might want to say yourself?
I imagine there will be something to say, I suppose, if I haven't said everything I needed to up until that point. My intention is to try.
Mm.
If there's an act of contrition I haven't been brave enough to perhaps make, and I can only make when I feel like there's no other time left, I think that would be a way to do it. I imagine I'll have to see at that time, is there some part of me that I can only access when you know that the end is near? And if so, then that would be a great way to leave that bit of wisdom or love for people in my life.
Mm. Now, Sandra, I know we're not talking about necessarily last words. Your dying breath is something that people might conjure up, but you spend time helping people, articulate what they want to say to loved ones in a very intentional way, knowing that they are going to die soon. Why is that so important to help people sort of get that message out?
I think it's important for the dying person and for those who are left behind. So for the dying person to think about what has mattered in their life, what has been important to them, what have they achieved. And I know that like this show looks at people who have led extraordinary lives, but I actually don't think that anyone's life is not extraordinary. I think we all have something to contribute. And we can all say, this mattered to me and to someone else. And in doing so, in communicating that to those who are left behind, it helps it's almost like these like generational flow of like those beliefs that we hold in our families that help us to move on. Like Eric Dane says, fight, and we persevere in our family. And those girls can hold that strength inside them, knowing this is something that we all shared.
Mm-hmm. And James, Eric is speaking to his daughters in that clip. What's the power of last words?
I'm thinking of my mother, who was taken rather suddenly, but she was hospitalized before, and I remember going to the nearby, London Drugs and getting her a keyboard so she could write her life story when she was in the hospital. And kind of all I have are a couple paragraphs because she didn't get a lot of time to finish that. But I treasure them so much. They are just this beautiful like poem of a life that I can and look at with love. So it's just this reminder of what's important in your life and the people you've left who are still a part of you. And it's just such a treasure.
I love that. I really do love that. Sandra, this show, Famous Last Words, as you mentioned, is famous people who are facing their mortality in front of the camera. But outside of the show, we're starting to see this as well. Before he died a few weeks ago, James Van Der Beek shared a very poignant post on social media, a few of them actually, like this one.
When I was younger, I used to define myself as an actor, right? Which was never really all that fulfilling. And then I became a husband, and that was much better. And then I became a father, and that was the ultimate. I could define myself then as a loving, capable, strong, supportive husband, father, provider, steward of the land that we're so lucky to live on. And for a long time, that felt like a really good definition to the question, who am I? What am I? And then this year, I had to look my own mortality in the eye.
I mean, it's such a relatable, powerful message. Sandra, you and your colleagues on the palliative care ward talked a lot about this video. Why was it so powerful, do you think?
To me, it's so powerful because I see a lot of people in a phase of their life where they can't define themselves in the way that they used to. Uh, they may have been, the CEO of their own company, an artist, something that involved a lot of doing and achievement. And all of that is gone when you're just lying there. People find it very difficult to stop doing. And when we spoke about this, we really, like, the thing that we all said, even though we see this every day, was, I hope when I'm in that bed that I can accept that myself for just existing is enough, lovable, and like worthy of this life.
Do you think seeing celebrities talk about this changes how we view this message?
I do. I honestly, so many of these, even famous deaths are often like, we hear an announcement that says, surrounded by family, they peacefully went, and everyone wonders what happened. And these are all kind of those parasocial relationships we have, right? By James Van Der Beek and Eric Dane having the courage to like share their experience, they're pulling the curtain away from what it means to have a serious illness and to face death, and maybe gives us a little bit of courage that either you're just like me and I can face this too, and maybe I don't have to do this alone. Maybe I can involve my circles so that this experience can be a worthwhile one for me as I face my own mortality.
James, what do you think about what Sandra just said about how celebrities can change our conception of death and this experience of coming to the end?
Yeah, I mean, two things. One, they're avatars of our society. So we look to them to represent something important about our own experience, whether as actors or public figures. And so I think it's important that we adopt this practice throughout our society. And, it often starts with kind of leading figures, whether they're celebrities or political ones, et cetera, embracing these kind of difficult concepts. And I recall when I got my own news and I called my meditation teacher, Shinzen, and I said, Shinzen, I've got this really crazy news. And he said, well, I've heard stories like yours before, but for all of them up until now, it's been a positive experience to go through that kind of reckoning. And it's hard to believe. It's hard to believe. Mm-hmm. But that's what we're hearing. That's what we're hearing, these people who maybe come into who they are in these last days, years, months of their life. And I think that's really important to know, that life has that figured out for us too.
I think that's really beautiful, and I really appreciate both of you taking us through this this difficult subject. But I think it was such a moving and actually uplifting conversation. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Dr. James Maskalyk is an emergency physician and author. His Substack is Dr. Heal Thyself. And Sandra Marche is a palliative care nurse in Toronto. You can watch Famous Last Words and Eric Dane's last interview on Netflix.